Okay, well, hello everybody. This is Steve Patterson. Work on the Global Leaders Program team with Laura and Jimmel and Engin and Vivek. More on the technical side of helping customers deploy and use and get the best practices out of autonomous database. Today, what we'll do is discuss kind of a overview of some of the more recent features that have been released in the last quarter. We've got some operational benefits, some simple, make it easier to use, plus some pretty big marquee type feature introduction capabilities, some things that make it a lot easier to migrate. So definitely been some interesting things released in the last quarter or so that we can go through, and we can talk about how they can be used within your applications. As always, there's a lot of new ways to learn about these new features. We do have a whole book essentially in the documentation about new features, plus everything's documented across there. Most of the time we've blogged on already most of these features as well, so you can see real world examples of how to use the features typically. And then there are new feature videos that we publish onto YouTube as well that you can find and review more details as to what each individual feature goes into. Okay. As always, we have our long kind of timeline here. You can see the development team has been very, very busy over the last number of years. Today, we're really going to focus more here in the June, July, August timeframes here. So kind of coming in around the character support timeframe is one of the things we'll talk about today. But there's been a number of new features and new capabilities released here, and as you can see, we're continuing, and that roadmap will continue off onto the right into the future. There's a lot of new exciting things coming down in the roadmap as well moving forward. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about here is a kind of a make life easier for you. We've removed the requirement for using network security groups on private endpoints. So I'm sure most of you use private endpoints on your databases. A lot of our customers do. Not everyone does, but one of the things that we essentially, it was initially we required a network security group to be applied, and now it is an optional feature. So really under the covers, what that means is it's a lot easier. Historically, customers typically start off by using security lists. An NSG is an alternate to a security list. So more advanced customers use network security groups, and I think that's really from an infrastructure standpoint the recommendation that would be given. But in simple deployments, setting things up very quickly, you can just now use a security list. So removes one step from setting up your security. And also one of the things I see here commonly is when you're setting up connectivity, it makes connectivity a lot easier, right? You're removing one of the points in the layer there, so it makes it a lot easier to be able to connect to your databases as well. Another major capability that really helps with migrations, especially for older Oracle customers that we've introduced now, is you can now choose your character set within Autonomous Database. So initially, everything was being set into the default database character set. As you can see, UTF-8 over there. And what essentially now this is allowing us to do is customers with older databases and non-standard database character sets are now able to move into Autonomous Database much easier. The process, we would still recommend you upgrade to the latest AL32 UTF-8 character sets, which is the Unicode character set. Any of our documentation will always tell you to make, it's best practice to be on that character set moving forward. But there are certainly a lot of customers that have been using Oracle database for many, many, many years and are not using that today and don't want to go through the process of migrating that data across. Now, it can be done. Certainly you can change character sets as well as part of your migration, but it's removing that step and certainly opening Autonomous Database up to a lot of what I would call older style applications, older applications where they've built things built into using the non-Unicode character set. Okay, so that's a pretty significant new feature introduction that really helps migrating older databases across. Another feature that really we've introduced here recently is real application database replay for migrating it, as well as just testing your database application. So traditionally, I can't remember how many years ago, but like 10 years ago, we came out with a new feature called real application testing, which essentially captures your workload and then allows you to replay that in a simulation mode to be able to see what changes may occur as part of an upgrade or as part of a migration. So now what we can do is you can now capture your replay on your existing OCI database or on your on-premise database, and then replay that on the autonomous database. So as part of the overall migration process, it really reduces a lot of the challenges and risks associated with moving your workloads across, because now you can actually replay that workload without having to build a whole application to do the replay in and of itself. So this definitely makes life a lot easier for migration teams and performance teams to be able to ensure that they're getting the right performance before they release the application to production as part of a migration. We do not have the ability yet to capture. We're certainly working on that to be able to capture on an on-premise database. But today, for example, as part of a migration, you could capture on-premise and then replay within autonomous database to be able to compare those performance metrics. And I work with many customers that would definitely have wanted to have this feature over the last couple of years, because that's one of the major challenges, is making sure you get the right performance in any migration. So being able to replay the real world workload is definitely a great new capability in autonomous database. Another thing that really helps with management of the database is being able to change the names of the databases. So we've had a feature for a while to be able to actually change the database name of the database. But in conjunction with that, and in the world of cloud, right, there's always the logical display name, right? So the display name is what you see in the console, and is actually pretty important, because that's what console users go to find the name of the database. But we've previously been able to change the instance name, but now we can do both of those names, right? The instance and the display name. It's really an important factor, especially in some of the use cases, to be able to change the name as part of a cloning process. So we see a lot of customers doing a clone of the database and then renaming that clone to introduce that new database as a production database. So renaming both the display name and the instance really makes life a lot easier for the administrator to be able to see which database they're looking at and keeping things in sync. So that was definitely a very nice thing to make it a lot easier to use the autonomous database, and doing things that traditionally, if you did the database rename on premise, you'd need an expert DBA, and you'd need a lot of time to make sure you were doing things correctly. This way we can just click a couple buttons and update the database name and the display name all in one. Okay. From a security standpoint, we've also introduced recently a grace period for rotating the wallet. So wallet rotation is something that is a best practice of that many customers, especially in production environments, use to be able to make sure that the wallet's getting rotated on a regular time period. They can set times as to when they want to rotate those wallets, and they can manually rotate those wallets as well. But before, we didn't really have a grace period. So now you can choose a grace period as to when both wallets would be allowed during the grace period. So both wallets can be used to access the database during that grace period, so that you don't have to race to go and change all the wallets out at once, or shut everything down to rotate the wallets. This grace period gives you a good amount of time to be able to go make the changes, change the wallets on your application servers and on your clients, to really reduce the amount of downtime or impact to your applications of a wallet rotation. So as part of a best practice, you should certainly be rotating your wallets for production applications especially. And now you can now take advantage of this grace period to update the applications with the new wallet. Okay. This quarter, we've also released a new upgrade to Application Express to 22.1. Lots of new features introduced within Apex. I won't go through all of those, but if you're a big user of Apex, it's very nice because now you've got hands-free upgrade to Application Express. You don't have to do anything; it's all done, built in there for you, and you can now take advantage of the new enhancements there inside of Application Express. Okay, another I consider to be a significant migration feature, as well as development feature, I would say, is when we originally released Autonomous Database, we, especially in shared, we did not allow for Oracle Java in the database, right? And Java in the database goes many, many years back, and there's many customers that have written applications using Java in the database. So now we do support Java in the database in Autonomous Database shared as well as dedicated. So being able to run your Java in the database means that if you've got an application on premise, some of those examples would be Oracle built applications that use Java in the database that we're now being able to support in Autonomous Database. But I've also seen a number of custom applications where Java was used in the database. And now we can migrate those into Autonomous Database shared and be confident that we would be able to support all the key feature functionalities of that application and that as it existed on premise. Previously, I've worked with a couple customers to, let's move the data or the application code out of Java to shared, but now we can actually just use your Java code directly inside of Autonomous Database in a secure manner too. That's, I think, the most important element here is that we've really done a lot of work to make sure that using the JVM in the database is a very secure model, especially seeing as it's a shared architecture. So that's really a significant new migration capability there. We're also very proud of our availability metrics. So we have published a page that you can all bookmark that allows you to see what our regional availability service level agreement or actual results are for different regions. So there's a web page out here. It's a public web page that everyone has access to that you can go through and see, by region, what our individual performance metrics are, so our availability. So you can see where we are from a July, August, September standpoint, availability of the whole region. Right now, there is a separate link for database level, instance level availability, which is on the home page of your database in the console. But this shows regional availability across all autonomous databases for an individual region by month. So really, it's a good way to be able to look and see at a high level. Yes, Oracle is meeting its service level agreements, or better yet, actually beating its service level agreements in most cases. And I think that's the really important thing to see from this. And so you can now come in and track our performance on availability at the aggregate level, as well as now at the instance level too, which you've been able to do for a few months now. Okay, so that's a real nice thing to be able to do. And as part of that, with Autonomous Data Guard, we have updated the SLA. So the service level agreement is now at 90, at a 4.9 level, right? 99.995 when you're using Autonomous Data Guard. So that is documented into our documentation, as well as into the Cloud Service Pillar document, which is essentially the details of everything, what the service offers from a capability and service level agreement standpoint. So that takes us to that 4 nines of availability that's been written in documents. There's no hidden exclusion clauses and things like that. So our goal is definitely to be able to have the 99.995 SLA, and so that's now been fully documented, and it is part of the documentation, and as well as the pillar document out there. Okay. So high availability, lots of transparency about that availability. I think those are really nice things for a service that, frankly, I don't see a lot of database services or cloud services actually, publishing that type of data and then, publishing their SLAs as well. So that's a real nice thing to see there as a user of the service. And then last here is we've got, I consider it to be a pretty significant feature. I'm a user of R, right? If you are a business analyst or a data scientist or a statistical person, right? You've probably used R in the past, and we've had a lot of integration into R with the Oracle database over the years. But now we've introduced a feature into our OML, Oracle Machine Learning tool called OML for R that essentially allows you to write R code and use the database or the autonomous database as your engine to build and the models, score the data, as well as generate graphics, generate tables and graphs and things like that, which R is very, very good at. So now you can use the OML tool to actually author your R code and then run that in the actual Oracle container space of the database, meaning you're actually using the processors from the database rather than having to set up some external thing and move the data across and process the data there. So as an example, and you might be kind of hard to see it, but if you've used OML, Oracle Machine Learning in the past, it is essentially Apache Zeppelin type interface where you've got your paragraphs and then the result of the paragraphs. But as you can see, there's the little %R, which essentially means that the code that follows is R code. So now, in the past we've had %SQL and things like that. Now we have %R, and you can now generate, all types of graphics. Using R, it takes some knowledge and experience to understand all the details as to how it works. But a lot of people are trained in colleges and universities with R today. A lot of statistical people really focus on using R a lot because it's very free form and flexible. And you can really pretty much achieve anything you want to be able to do in it. So being able to do that directly integrated into the database without having to do any additional setup, without having to download R code and be able to set it up on a compute instance and things like that makes life a lot easier for the statistical users of the database. So now they can get a lot more value out of the data. Okay. And I think that was the last one I had. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to take them, or we can move on to the next section.
Well, there was a question from Holger, but Yasin answered it. I don't know if you want to talk about that any further, you or Yasin, or if that's all good. About replay.
Oh yeah, what was the question? Let me just see. Trying to find the question. What was the question?
Is it part of the regular subscription, which Yasin said it was?
Yes, the licensing of it. Yeah, so that's I think an important element too. Is that in general, and Yasin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I like to look at it here is that when we put something into autonomous database, we're not really ever going to require a license for something. When we put it into autonomous database, it typically means it's completely included in including the license of it. So, I would say as and specifically to real application testing and replay, it is definitely included in your cost, whether that be the BYOL or the purchase, the license through the service. So I think, but in most cases, I would look at it as when we try to put a new feature in there, it is included in the service.
So, for example, something that would be additional license, like cross-region data guards, that's an option that you choose, right? How does that look different? How do you know you have to pay extra?
Well, we document that there's an extra cost associated because you're actually deploying additional cores when you're using data guard cross-regionally or even locally, right? Mm-hmm. So you're actually, the metric is the number of OCPUs as well as the storage. So those are definitely documented, and we put those out there on the pricing pages as well as in that PAS document that has all the details of what is included in the service. What I would use the example of is things like diagnostics and tuning and those types of things, that are internal to the database, very much like RAT. You don't need diagnostics and tuning, or you don't need a license for that. There's no additional UCC charges, meaning cloud credits or anything additionally to use those types of features in the database. So Typically, yeah, it's a good question. It is a case-by-case basis. In some cases, and I'll even use the example of where we originally required some multi-tenant licenses for databases of a certain size, and we've removed that requirement. So it's a case-by-case basis, but I think the general approach is to try to look at it as everything should be included in your autonomous database. Okay.
Right, great, thank you. All right, thank you, Steve. So on to Yasin. Thank you very much for joining, Yasin.
No problem. Hello, everyone. Can I start sharing? Yes.
So just if everyone doesn't know Yasin, so he is basically the owner on the PM side for ADB. So he's a guy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you see the slide?
Yep.
Okay, as Laura said, for the people who we haven't met before, I lead the product management team for Oracle Autonomous Database, and specifically Autonomous Database on shared Exadata infrastructure. Today, I'll just spend a couple of minutes to talk to you about this new service that Larry and Satya announced a couple months ago. I think it was beginning of July, which is called Oracle Database Service for Microsoft Azure. Maybe some of you already. Yeah.
You are not on presentation mode.
I'm not?
No.
How about now?
Yeah, now it's good.
Okay, thank you. So Larry and Satya announced this on July. Maybe some of you already heard the announcement or you already looked into the specifics of this thing, but I'll just give you a brief introduction, and then if you have specific questions, we can go through those questions as well. So the idea about this service is we had a lot of customers asking the question of how can I use Oracle database services and specifically autonomous database if my cloud standard in Azure and I have other tools and services that I use in Azure. Like a lot of people use Power BI for analytics and they want to use autonomous database with Power BI in a completely integrated manner without doing a lot of manual configuration and manual setup. Likewise for monitoring, a lot of people are saying, oh, I'm using a lot of Azure things and I use Azure monitoring services like Azure Apps Insights and that type of thing to monitor all my infrastructure, including my databases. Can I use the same with autonomous database? Until this, there was some integration between Azure and OCI. I'm going to show what that was. But to do these things, there was some of these things were possible, like integrating Power BI with autonomous or using Azure monitoring services for autonomous, but it required a lot of configuration and setup. This service is helping customers or is going to help customers to get automation for these things. So it's easy to get started when you're using Azure for some services and you want to use the autonomous database in OCI. So the foundation for this is obviously the OCI Azure Interconnect. For people who don't know about it, this is a fast physical private link between OCI data centers and Azure data centers. This is available in 11 regions so far globally. And since this is a private link between OCI and Azure data centers, the latency of this is much lower compared to using things like public internet. So today, it provides less than 2 milliseconds of latency using the private interconnect. And there is no egress or ingress charges for data transfer from the OCI side for this. And also there's no port charges for the Azure side and OCI Fast Connect. So this was the start, and this has been used by many customers until now, since it was announced a couple of years ago. So on top of this, what ODSA brings is, this brings an Oracle managed service that integrates your Azure account and OCI account and sets up the interconnect and networking between these two data centers, between these two different clouds automatically without you manually configuring anything. So you connect your Azure and OCI assets or accounts or tenancies, and then you provision an autonomous database and you can use it as a native database in your Azure tenancy. I'll show you some UI screenshots, and I'll also show you the actual screen. But if you see the screenshots here, the UI for this looks like the look and feel of the UI is very much Azure-like. So you'll have the same database provisioning experience, same monitoring experience if you're familiar with Azure. So as you see here on the screen, you'll be able to use Azure native APIs as well as Azure native UI to provision these databases. I'll show you the architecture a little bit later. So this is in addition to the OCI's current portfolio of multi-cloud and hybrid cloud services, right? So we have the OCI public cloud commercial regions available in a lot of places. I think the current count should be over 40 by now. We also have government regions to serve government customers in the US. Next to that, we have the dedicated regions. Like if you want to have your own data center hosting OCI for your own company, you can have a dedicated region which can run all OCI services, including autonomous database inside of it. And then we have the Exadata Cloud Customer product, which you can use in your own data center to run regular Exadata databases or even autonomous database on Exadata Cloud Customer infrastructure. And then, as I showed you before, to serve multi-cloud customers, we had the Microsoft Azure Interconnect, which is a low latency private link between Azure and OCI. So Oracle Database Service for Azure is an addition on top of this portfolio, and this makes it much easier for Azure customers to use services like autonomous database in OCI. So how does this work? If you want to use this, there's a guided user experience flow that can link your Azure and OCI accounts. So you need to have Azure accounts and OCI accounts for this to work. If you don't have any OCI accounts, you can create it through this mechanism as well. So it ties these accounts together, it federates the identity, it federates things like policies between these two accounts. It also sets up the interconnect automatically for you, so you don't need to do any manual configuration at all. If you go through this flow, what you have is you have an Azure tenancy with your existing assets in it, and you have an OCI tenancy that is linked to this Azure tenancy or Azure account. And then you'll be able to provision and operate autonomous databases or other databases like Exadata or even DBCS using the UI that this portal provides. You can do everything related to autonomous database. I'll show you how that works using the Azure API or UI, or you can also go to the OCI side and use the OCI UIs and APIs if you want to do that as well. So after this is done, so one thing we do is provide the Azure native API and UI, provide the network configuration automation. The third thing is what you see on the right here, database metrics and events. So we, as you know, we have a lot of metrics and events that we emit from the autonomous database. So you can use services like OCI notifications, OCI metrics and events to monitor your databases natively in OCI. But if you're an Azure customer and if you're using ODSA, what we do is we push all those metrics and events to the Azure services, to the relevant Azure services. For example, you can use Azure App Insights to see metrics and events related to your autonomous database natively. So you don't need to go to OCI and sign up for an OCI service and pay for an OCI service to use that. These are going to be available natively in your Azure services. Similarly, you can use Azure Log Analytics to look at logs that the autonomous database emits. So all you have in OCI side in this model is the database, and everything else resides in Azure, and you connect your clients on Azure to the autonomous database, and you monitor the autonomous database again using your Azure services. So a simple architecture diagram here, as you see at the bottom of the screen, we have this Azure OCI interconnect, which is a private tunnel between these regions. As part of this user experience flow that I mentioned before, this is automatically configured out of the box for you. The moment this is done, you can see all the databases here from your Azure site, and you can connect to them and you can manage them from the Azure side. If you want, there is also identity federation. So if you're using things like Azure Active Directory, these may be federated to the OCI side. So you can use those identities to manage or log into your autonomous database. We have things like, if you're not aware of that, Azure Service Principal support, which means your autonomous database can use Azure services like Azure Object Store, without you providing username, passwords, or any other API key type of credentials to the autonomous database. You can have your policies in the Azure site that define what the autonomous database can do. You can say, I allow this specific autonomous database to access this bucket or this directory in my Azure object store. And you can use those policies to control access rather than you providing your keys to the autonomous database. One thing that is major here is this is at no additional cost. So the UI, the portal we provide, the network configuration, everything is covered by Oracle. There is no additional cost to use this. You can just sign up for it and start using it. It provides, I'll show you what services it provides, but as you see on the screen here, it provides Exadata database service, autonomous database service, and also the base database service that you can use. Again, with less than 2 milliseconds of latency if you have OLTP type of applications, which are sensitive to latency. The current number based on testing and based on customer experience is less than 2 milliseconds. So how the UI looks like. One thing I want to make sure people understand this is a UI portal that is provided by Oracle. So Oracle owns this, Oracle supports this, and Oracle codes this. But the look and feel is similar to Azure. So at this point, you don't go to your Azure UI and see autonomous database over there. You need to go into a separate URL for ODSA. We are trying to make this available natively in Azure in the roadmap. I don't know if that's going to be possible or not at this point, but we are working with Azure to see if this is going to be possible. So what you see if you go to the ODSA portal is the available services, which are, as I said, autonomous database, Exadata, and base database. So if you go to autonomous database, you'll see a provisioning flow similar to what other Azure services do. The inputs you provide here obviously are going to be similar to what you're doing on the OCI side. CPU count, storage, networking configuration, license type, all those details. And then if you go through this flow, you'll be able to provision an autonomous database that is linked to your Azure tenancy. I'll show you a small demo of it if time allows in this session. So there were a lot of customers who were testing this ODSA service in limited availability mode. Some of them are described here, and you can read about their experience with this. There are customers today that are testing or trying out the autonomous database using ODSA. So we are working with multiple customers to help them integrate their Azure accounts with OCI accounts and have them use autonomous database using ODSA. Okay, we went through what's available: autonomous database, Exadata database, and base database service. So specifically, before I show you the UI and show you a brief demo, what's available today in ODSA is the list of features and functionality that are listed in this slide. What I mean by this is I'm going to show you later. These are natively available in the ODSA portal or UI I showed you here. So if you go to your ODSA portal, you'll be able to create, delete, start, stop databases, scale up and down, enable, disable auto scaling, manage your wallets, and all those things. But obviously there's a long list of functionality that we provide in OCI, like data guard, cloning, refreshable clones, OML, and all other things. Some of those things are not natively available in the ODSA portal yet, if they're not in this list. But what you can do is we also provide the ability for you in this UI to go to the OCI console for the database, which has 100% of the functionality. So if you're using ODSA and you need a functionality that's not in this list, you can go to OCI console and use those things over there. But in the coming months, we are moving all those functionality from OCI console to this new UI, including APIs. So more and more things will be available natively in the ODSA portal. So you'll be able to use those functionality without even seeing the OCI console. But until that happens, and until we port all that functionality to ODSA, as a workaround possibly, you can go to OCI console and use that functionality over there. Okay, let me show you how the UI looks like, and then if you have questions, I can answer those as well. So this is the ODSA portal that I was talking to you about. If you look at the URL, you see something that says console.multicloud.oracle.com. So this is an OCI or Oracle URL that you need to go to. And then from here, you can see autonomous databases, other databases. This is an example autonomous database that was created before. Just like in OCI, you see similar information here. You have the database connection strings, you have networking, you can see backups. And just like in OCI, you can use database actions, other management operations like stop, restart, download, wallet, and everything. But as I mentioned before, this currently is not extensive. It's not 100% the same as the OCI console. So let's say you want to do some other operation that's not available here. What you can do here, we also provide a link to the OCI resource as linked here. If you click this link, it's going to go to the OCI console for that specific database. Again, using things like single sign-on. So this one has 100% of the functionality, and you can do all kinds of things here if you want. Again, all these actions, all these tools, and whatever is available in the OCI console, in the roadmap, we want to provide that same functionality in the Azure console here. Was there a question? Someone was saying something, I think.
I think it was just background.
Oh, all right. So if you go to home, as I showed you in the screenshot before, you see the available services here. Just to show you a brief example, if you go to autonomous database, you see a list of databases provisioned here. If you want to create a new one, you click create. Just like other Azure services, it's a similar experience. You pick your resource group, you provide, let's pick one. You provide the instance name, test database or something. And then you go through this multiple step approach, CPU count, scaling, storage terabytes, license type, database version, and name. Likewise with networking. So far, we provide two networking options. One is public endpoints, as similar to the OCI, which is secure access from everywhere, which means this database is available with a public IP, and you can connect to it from the internet or from your Azure clients. Or you can also specify a specific CIDR range or IP address that you want to allow to connect to this database. And we also provide walletless connections, MTLS, TLS, all those options. What we don't have today is private endpoint connectivity from Azure to the autonomous database. So if you want your autonomous database to have only a private IP that's visible in your Azure account, that is in the roadmap, and it's going to be coming in a month or two. As Steve was saying in his presentation, a lot of people prefer to use private endpoints for security purposes, or for their company security dictates using private endpoints or private IPs. That is going to be available in a month or two. So that was it from my side. If you're interested in this, obviously you can reach out to me, or you can reach out to us through Laura, and we can see how we can get you to try this out. I can answer any questions if you have any. Okay,
but that's available now, right?
This is available today, yes. So since July, you can just sign up for it. Again, it's a free thing. So if you have Azure presence, if you're using Azure already, if you want to try this, you can just sign up for it, and there's no cost to you.
Okay, so go ahead and let us know if there's any questions. We're here. Thank you, Yasin. There's no questions that I see.
You're welcome, no problem.
Thank you. All right. And Murtaza, on to you.
Hey, Laura, let me just share my screen.
Sure.
Hi, guys. My name is Murtaza Hussain. I'm part of product management team within Observability and Management Cloud in Oracle Cloud. Okay. So today, I'll be kind of presenting, giving a high-level overview of what observability management entails from a service point of view, and then we'll kind of deep dive. It's a more of a high-level deep dive into two services within observability management, which is database management service, and the other one, which is a complementary service called operations insights. All right. So just kind of a quick overview of what observability management is. It's basically, it starts with the basic cloud services like compute, storage, networking, and security and control plane telemetry, as you can see on the bottom there. And then from that, we have built a set of relational services like monitoring, logging, notification, streaming functions, resource manager that helps accelerate and protect cloud native app development. And we also have developed a service connector hub, so services can observe and manage and integrate with other Oracle services, as well as open standard based and third-party services. And then on top of that, we have Foundation. We continue to add advanced services providing capabilities that help customers gain greater insights, solve current business problems, and innovate for the future, right? So it's kind of like a layered approach. The infra, then O&M foundational services, and then we have O&M advanced services. So today, I am basically focusing on the database management service, and the other one being operational insight, which entails capacity planning, SQL insights, and a lot more. All right. So for this session, we're mainly focusing on observability and management platform from database management operation insights point of view. We divide this platform into two different cloud native services. One is database management platform, which provides a unified console for on-premises and cloud databases with lifecycle database management capabilities for monitoring, performance management, tuning, and administration, mainly matching to what we typically historically had in Oracle Enterprise Manager, right? That's our on-prem version of monitoring and management tool. With some caveats, this is a growing service within OCI. So right now we are not feature matched, right? We're kind of working on it. The roadmap is pretty heavy, and we're kind of working towards making sure that in the near term, it's on par from a feature perspective. Now, anything beyond for long-term analysis, one can use operational insights. That's a complementary service database management service, which is essentially has few out-of-the-box applications for predicting and forecasting workload and help eliminate performance issues from an application point of view. All right, double-clicking on OCI database management service. In terms of the service, it is an on-demand cloud-native subscription service that is natively available in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure as a managed service. It combines the backend instrumentation and tools that are already available with the Oracle database kernel itself, and you have a rich visualization-driven interface, which allows you to have single pane of glass management for databases that are either deployed in Oracle Cloud or in-premise. Now, Oracle database deployed in cloud could be OCI virtual machine, bare metal, XSCS, autonomous databases. And also you have cloud native capabilities, which allows you to have continuous upgrade and patching of the tool itself. You don't have to invest time to manage any agents or the monitoring of the solution itself. All right, in terms of supporting of databases right now, it connects to Oracle databases 11.2.0.4 and above. More on database management service. DBS essentially get a unified console for on-premise and cloud databases with lifecycle database management capabilities for monitoring, performance management, tuning, and administration. They can use advanced database fleet diagnostics and tuning to troubleshoot issues and optimize performance. So essentially, it has the same capabilities what we have in Oracle Enterprise Manager. That is the performance hub with its all bells and whistles. So you can literally optimize SQL with real-time SQL monitoring, simplify database configurations, and so on. All right, more so, it also supports autonomous databases, right? So it can support from the fleet view, it can support autonomous databases and other cloud databases, which are XSCS and VM based, right? It also helps with looking at autonomous databases from a resource perspective. You can drill down from the fleet summaries page into a specific autonomous database
to look at some of these key metrics which are listed over here and a lot more. So let me point out some of the few items that customers really like in terms of database management service. They are using the Performance Hub. It's a common view and tool across databases and tools. When you are in firefighting mode, it's nice to have quick time comparison of current performance to last 7 days or same 24-hour period a week ago. As far as what's coming, it has we have Exadata tab and Performance Hub that is up and coming. We have more capabilities we are integrating in terms of SQL tuning. That's in the pipeline right now. Now, in terms of database management service from a deployment perspective, there are various features that are available across different deployments now, and we are continuously working on enhancing these features. I'm not going to go through the detail, but you can see it's a pretty rich feature set, which is across different flavors of databases. And from autonomous perspective, we have database fleet, summary, and Performance Hub available out of the box. And then we have other features which are coming on the roadmap as we work on those. So this is kind of like the breakdown of how the database management service kind of works from a feature perspective, right? So there's a baseline feature which is called the basic management for cloud databases, right? That is available for VM, and XSCS based databases. That includes out of the box Performance Hub with Azure Analytics and SQL monitoring tabs only for CDB based databases. It also includes 14 key DB metrics for CDB. Then the higher level service, which is the paid service, is called full management for cloud databases. This is an additional cost that includes database fleet, database summary, Performance Hub with all the bells and whistles, and then all the other features which are listed here. I just want to mention support for PDB is on the roadmap, and we are actively working on to get it integrated into the service. This is the pricing for database management service. We essentially have 3 SKUs across cloud databases, external on-prem databases, and if you want to bring your own license. Now on to Operation Insights service, which is also part of Observability and Management Cloud. So now looking at the solution areas which Operation Insights provides, it essentially allows you to do effective capacity planning and SQL performance tuning, right? In order to do capacity planning for database and host, we can use the capacity planning app, which comes out of the box, as part of the service, and which essentially allows you to trend and forecast resource requirements. SQL Warehouse is another application out of the box, which within Operational Insight service, which allows you to get insights into SQL performance of your databases. Now, if you have an Exadata system, your data center, be it on-premise or in the cloud, you can get deep dive into the resources and also see how effectively you can do database consolidation by looking at various Exadata metrics. And then lastly, we have this warehouses, which we are offering as part of Operation Insight service, which is AWR Hub, where you can basically ingest snapshots of AWR performance data into a warehouse within Operational Insights. Secondly, we also have EM Warehouse, which has operational data and the metadata pertaining to your targets within Oracle Enterprise Manager. You can ingest that through a cloud bridge into Operational Insights. Lastly, we have recently added Exadata Warehouse with a similar kind of setup for analytics. So as a database fleet administrator or capacity planner, the capacity planning application lets you perform the following use case goals at the compartment level for both CPU and storage resources. It literally gives you a bird's eye view of aggregate database CPU allocation, utilization, and resource trends. It helps in kind of giving a view of fleet-wide distribution of allocated database CPU resources and their utilization levels. And lastly, it kind of provides proactive insights into current CPU storage utilization and issues and forecasts to occur in the near term. Secondly, we also have a SQL Warehouse function within Operation Insights.
You can analyze the SQL performance problems for enterprise-wide applications across a fleet of databases. And lastly, I want to kind of quickly touch on the AWR Hub, which is essentially taking all the AWR data from databases and then storing it in autonomous database, essentially ADW within offsite tenancy. In essence, data is ETL from DB resources into OC object storage, and then from there it's ETL into autonomous database for different analytic use cases. So for the sake of time, I'm gonna skip this slide. Just quickly gonna touch on it. Basically it's the AWR Hub within Operational Insights. Some of the key things I want to highlight over here is, it supports autonomous database shared, dedicated, and recently we have also added support for external databases. So from architecture point of view, it's basically ingesting data from your databases into the warehouse, and then for their users can log in and basically build use cases, analytic use cases on top of that, right? And all this is done through a cloud bridge using object storage in cloud. In the recent past, we have also built and added this new feature, which is called AWR Explorer. Essentially, it's an analytic tool on top of the AWR Hub, which lets you do advanced diagnostics and analytic use cases based on AWR Hub data. All right, to summarize, we looked at the differentiated capabilities and what's on the roadmap for Operational Insights. So essentially, OPSI is a fully managed, as I mentioned, cloud-native service that relies on core Oracle database instrumentation. It also gets data from Oracle engineered systems, other varied system tools such as host databases, and etc. Right? It also kind of help you with utilizing SQL Performance Warehouse to gain critical insights into the performance of your SQLs. In terms of what's on the roadmap, we are adding what-if analysis capability with built-in machine learning model for forecasting use cases across databases, hosts, and other targets. We're also adding native agentless capability on OCI Cloud Oracle database. And we have recently added support for AWS Explorer, as I mentioned, and then there are many other things coming in the pipeline in terms of Operational Insights. Just to quickly highlight, this is again a table for supported deployments. We have features listed on the left-hand side, and then it's supported across these databases. On the autonomous side, we have capability for database capacity planning out of the box. We also support SQL Warehouse, SQL Explorer, and some of the other features are kind of on the pipeline. In terms of cloud databases, we have database capacity planning, SQL Warehouse, and Explorer, and other features are on the roadmap. Lastly, in terms of pricing, we have three SKUs across databases. We have cloud database SKU, and then we have one SKU for external database on-prem, and then we have for autonomous database, which is free of charge for Operational Insights. And then down below, we have two SKUs dedicated for the warehouse use case. As I mentioned, the AWR Hub, EM Warehouse, and the Exadata Warehouse. Those are specific for those. All right, that's all I had for today. Please let me know if you have any questions.
All right, thank you, Murtaza. So there are no questions in the chat, but we'll keep you posted on the developments there. Great progress. All right, so thank you everyone for joining, and we'll talk again next month. Hold on. There's 3 new messages, but it's all about see you in Vegas. Are you going to Vegas? Can we get a copy of the deck? Yes, I recorded it and I will post it on our global leaders page so that you can replay the recording. And if there's specific slides you want, then yes, we can get you them. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.